Good evening. My name is Christie and I'm 36 years old. I'm a teacher in the DOE and have been for the past 10 years. Also, I have been teaching, doing ABA therapy and early intervention for children on the spectrum from ages birth through 3 years old. I am not currently in a classroom, but I have written a lesson plan on the subject of math. The reason why I chose math and I teach math is because I used to struggle with math as a child very bad. I had tutors and it wasn't clicking. I come to find out, learning about the brain, that math is the left side of the brain, whereas reading comprehension is the right side of the brain, which makes sense because as a teacher, I have found throughout my years, a student is either good at math or good at reading, usually not both. So with that said, I chose to teach math to help children like myself when I was younger, to make the math fun, to make them want to learn it, and to make sure that they don't give up on themselves. So this lesson that I have in front of me is about percentages. I chose percentages because I feel it's important in everyday life, whether it's in a restaurant or in a retail store or business, that a student should know how to convert a percentage off of a discount price. In this class, I have two students in particular who have a disability. The first disability I speak about in my lesson plan is an ADHD student. The next student has Asperger's syndrome. Both very different on the spectrum, and both need modifications in the lesson. My learning targets for this lesson, my first learning target, is that the student will understand the importance of using percentages in everyday life, as I just explained to you why I think it's important. The second learning target has to do with, and is for, my student with disabilities. Students will engage in small group activities, stations and centers, work together and communicate with one another to help each other understand how to get a correct discount amount by calculating the percentage off of an original price. Now, this might seem like an easy task for some students, but for these two types of students with those disabilities, it's not an easy task at all. One, they both do not like being in group activities. The ADHD student will become easily distracted and frustrated, and my Asperger's student won't even want to be there in the group from the beginning. So that's a goal I'd like to set for them and hopefully acclimate them into a group setting, because that's the way life is. Sometimes we have to work with other people. We can't just isolate ourselves and be introverted. I've included differentiated instructions that I've gotten from reading and learning throughout the semester. The author Tomlinson. In chapter 7 and 8, he talks about different ways to, implement differentiated instruction to your class, and why some may work over others. So I chose to use stations. Now, I wrote that as a modification in my lesson, but honestly, I think stations, after learning it this semester, is a great way for students to work together on task to complete an assignment. Stations, when defined by Tomlinson, are different spots in the classroom where students work on various tasks simultaneously. They can be formal or informal. So for this lesson with percentages, I have some students in stations creating the tags that they're going to need for their retail store, other students creating the price as close as they think possible to real life items. And the other stations are students being the buyers. I have implemented stations before in my classroom, and it does work very well. It's usually informal for me and my students, and it gives them the chance to become responsible for their own learning, yet feel the freedom to figure out their learning, as opposed to me just standing in the front of the room telling them what to do. The next modification that I made for differentiated instruction out of Tomlinson's book is compacting. Compacting, as defined by Tomlinson, encourages teachers to assess students before beginning a unit of study or development of a skill. Students who do well on the pre-assessment should not have to continue to work on what they already know. Now that makes sense because you have a large classroom. I think the 34 is the max here in New York. So you'll have some students that are right on task. You'll have other students that are lagging behind, excuse me. And you'll have the students that are kind of ahead and waiting. You definitely don't want those students who are finished earlier than the others to sit there being bored, because they'll get frustrated. So with that said, it's important for compacting to take place probably before the lesson and throughout the lesson as well. You not only need to challenge the students who need to be challenged, but you also have to modify for the students that are lagging behind. This way everyone kind of stays somewhat at the same pace. I haven't implemented this particular lesson yet. I have done the compacting, I have done the stations before, and I have implemented other differentiated instruction from Tomlinson's textbook. And I have to say, they really work very well. It's not easy having students in your class with an array of disabilities. You want to make them all feel special. You want to meet the needs of all of them. And in order to do that, you really need to know the student. And that is basically what the course this semester has taught us to do. I will definitely use my textbooks throughout the rest of my career because they have some really valuable resources as far as helping students with their goals and learning targets and differential instruction and definitions of behaviors, characteristics, and why it's happening. So definitely when you make a lesson plan, it's not a cookie cutout approach. Make sure you have the modifications necessary to meet all your students' needs. This way everyone's happy and you have a productive learning environment for all your students. Thank you and have a good night.